Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome to the home to talk about movies, because if you find yourself just finishing a really good movie, but having nobody to talk to, nobody to sit down and just really let out all your thoughts and feelings on the movie because you have nobody that'll listen to you talk about movies, well, don't worry anymore. We now have each other to fill in that depraved gap in all of our lives here. So with that in mind, today we're going to be doing another movie review, so let's just get right into it. Today we're going to be reviewing and discussing the new movie Fantastic Four: First Steps, which came out in 2025. Set in a retro futuristic 1960s Earth, the Fantastic Four: First Steps follows Marvel's first family as they battle to save the planet, and Reed and Sue's unborn child from the cosmic threat of Galactus and his mysterious herald, the Silver Surfer. So as we hop into the review and discussion for the new Fantastic Four movie, obviously on the channel we've been covering all of the other Fantastic Four movies. The only one that I haven't covered is that weird unreleased one. Came out in 1994, I think it is. So I didn't feel like watching that one. I don't even think it was really released, and I think it's still free on YouTube if you're interested in that one. But if you're interested in some of my more in-depth thoughts on the rest of this series and all the other attempts at a Fantastic Four movie, feel free to check out those videos. But for this new 2025 one, I was definitely really looking forward to it. To me, it kind of looked like a Marvel movie that was really trying to do something new, unique, and have a different style and vibe going on with the movie. So I was just really excited to check this out. I thought all the trailers and everything looked really good, and it looked like a Fantastic Four movie that was hopefully going to get things right this time. So that was kind of my expectations going into the movie. But yeah, let's get into the review section. This will be a spoiler review. I'm not going to go break down the plot and every single element of the movie step by step. More just when I get into my specifics, specifically around my mixed and negative section, I'll kind of go into more specific things. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings around the ending here, so it'll probably be more tailored to that. But heads up, this will include some spoilers for Fantastic Four: First Steps. So let's start off with the positives, or just the things that I really enjoyed about this movie. And first, I would say the biggest thing that really stood out to me is what I anticipated based off the marketing, which is the tone, vibe, and style of the movie. I love that it takes place in this retro but futuristic version of America in the 1960s. And I think the movie, what makes it kind of stand out on its own, is it does a really good job at showcasing this vibe throughout. I love the contrast that you get with the old retro 1960s stuff, just with the clothing, the cars, and everything in the environment. But then you also get that contrasting aspect to the movie with its futuristic stuff, which pretty much centers around all its technology, everything the Fantastic Four group of characters are using throughout the movie, specifically with their cool car, how it's so futuristic and high tech, but still looks like one of those old school cars from the 50s or 60s. So I just really like that contrast, because I think this kind of helps make the movie stand out on its own, and it's very unique even in the MCU here. My favorite thing about how contrasting it is with its tech and retro futuristic stuff is I feel like it kind of helped to make it a very grounded and realistic almost, but over the top science fiction movie at the same time. That contrasting tone, and I don't mean to say that in a negative way, I think it is a big positive, kind of helps ground it just a little bit, where it seems like these very over the top characters really do fit in a society that is retro and futuristic at the same time. Besides the tone, vibe, and style, I think the next biggest positive to me is really that family and team dynamic you get in this movie. And again, I think it helps it stand out on its own in the MCU, because obviously we've had a bunch of different team up movies in the MCU and just superhero movies in general. But this feels different than just another team up movie. Even just getting Thunderbolts a couple months ago, it feels vastly different than that, because it goes for that more The Incredibles vibe, where sure, this is a superhero team, but there's also a family unit within it. So kind of adds a new element to a team up movie. They have different family dynamics, and you could kind of see how all of them kind of fit into a typical family dynamic role and off balance and help each other out and showcase their weaknesses throughout. So I love that we're following a family here, and the dynamic that we get is absolutely incredible. I was really invested in that family group. And I think the family dynamic also just makes it just an interesting movie that I felt invested in. I think you get a lot of cool scenes of just the family together having Sunday night dinner, just hanging out. There's scenes of them like doing stuff together, researching and figuring stuff out, but then you also get the family shit on top of that. I think all the actors did a terrific job really showcasing their different personalities and trying to work together as this family unit. And we'll get into it here. I think this movie could have utilized a little bit more action, but I don't say that to say that the movie's boring in any way, because even when there's maybe not a whole lot going on, when you get these characters together and this family unit together, I still felt invested even when there wasn't like a whole lot going on in the background or around these characters. Overall, I think the CGI and special effects and set design are absolutely incredible. I think they're leaps and bounds better than any other Fantastic Four adaptation that we've gotten. And I was just so happy and excited to see that it seemed like a Marvel movie that actually took time building out its environment and didn't seem so heavy with the CGI. Like, obviously, a lot of it is CGI and green screen and blue stage, but you could tell they actually took time with it to make it believable, because that's an important aspect to any movie, and they've obviously dipped down in quality with some of that over the past couple years, so this seems like a more return to form, if that makes sense. I think easily this is the best The Thing has ever looked, thank God. I find him cheesy and funny in the originals. There's a certain charm there, but he looked definitely better in the 2015, but this is easily the best The Thing's ever looked. I think Reed Richards' stretch effects look incredible as well. I think Sue Storm's invisible stuff looks great, and Johnny Storm's flame effects look great. Everything looks really good up to 2025 kind of standards here. And I think this movie does what some of the other Fantastic Four movies really couldn't do, is this one actually makes the scientific and research side to Fantastic Four very interesting and captivating, where they have to go on little adventures, but it's more of a research mission. They're trying to problem solve, not by getting new weapons or, doing stuff with their powers or anything, but just really researching the best way to go about figuring out the situation that they find themselves in. So I love that it actually made the non-action stuff very interesting and compelling in this movie, which I think all the other ones really struggled, because here they're not only fighting together, but they're also researching and problem solving, and you buy into that a lot. Like we talked about with the action and CGI and green screen effects, I think all of them hold up very, very well. I love the visualization of Galactus. I mean, it is obviously leaps and bounds better than what they did in Rise of Silver Surfer. You're not just getting a little shadow or a little brief little glimpse of Galactus. You're actually getting him. You actually hear him in this movie. You see him come back down to Earth and fight the Fantastic Four. So I loved the visualization. I loved the voice and how he sounded, and it sounded incredible in Dolby in some parts, where it was really just rattling my entire theater. I think he's big and intimidating, and I love the visualization. It was something so cool seeing a villain to this like size and scope that I feel like I haven't really seen like this. The only thing close enough I could really say is like he's like a more human version of Godzilla, if that makes sense. And I think it all looks really, really great here. But let's jump into my mixed aspects for the movie. Now, again, this is where I'm going to kind of get into a little bit more spoiler territory. And the first thing I'll say is I didn't hate the ending or think it was bad in any sort of way. Even overall with this movie, I don't think it's bad. Just unfortunately, I left just kind of underwhelmed, if that makes sense. Specifically with the ending, it plays out just very cliche. It kind of played out exactly how I thought it would, just based off the trailers and marketing. I felt like the ending was kind of lacking some sort of big intensity because I never really feared for any of these characters here, unfortunately. Like, I cared about all of them, but I knew they were all going to be pretty much safe and everything would kind of work out fine. And it kind of plays out exactly like you would think. Like in this movie, Reed Richards and Sue Storm are obviously having a kid. And one of Reed Richards' biggest concerns is they don't know if this kid is going to come out normal. Is he going to come out with superpowers or some sort of issue with the kid? So that's a big plot point throughout the movie. And as soon as they introduce that, and especially once they first go to Galactus and he says he'll spare the Earth if they give him their child because he wants the child to be his successor, he's telling them that he has superpowers that he won't even make the Fantastic Four characters aware of. So just really like building up this baby for what it could potentially do. And as soon as it started getting into that, I'm like, okay, so this baby's obviously going to play a role here. It's going to either show its powers or save somebody in the end. And that's unfortunately exactly how it plays out. So I just kind of saw all that coming. So when it kind of played out that way, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's good. It was set up. I just kind of like felt a little empty to me. I don't know if I'm the only one here, but in the end, when they're fighting Galactus, Sue Storm is pushing him back with her invisible force field, and she's using her powers up until her final last breath, her final limit, and actually dies from pushing Galactus into the portal. At the end, Reed Richards is trying to save her. He can't, but then the baby climbs on top of her and she comes back to life. And I just I figured something like that was going to happen. So I feel like it's kind of going into my mixed here because it's not bad. It just kind of left me a little disappointed and underwhelmed that you see exactly where this is kind of gonna go. And to me, I can't tell if maybe it's my fault for going in with different expectations. I guess I just thought that with the after credit scene in Thunderbolts, how you saw the Fantastic Four ship going to the Thunderbolts Earth, like the Earth that we have been following from the majority of the MCU, and this Fantastic Four movie takes place in a different dimension and reality. I guess my impressions were that something horrible was going to happen during this movie to the point where they either couldn't save their Earth or they saved it. It was just destructed and they didn't want to stay there, or they had to leave because they couldn't save everybody or couldn't do exactly what they needed to do and had to get out of there. So I thought it was going to culminate to an ending in this movie where Galactus was either going to basically win or just do so much destruction that they had to get out of there. And I thought it would leave me off with this movie really looking forward to Doomsday, just kind of showing that threat, showing complicated characters that they had to leave their Earth because they failed, and culminating to this big ending where there's sacrifice and loss and something a little bit different. Again, I don't know if that's just my fault going in with those expectations, but it doesn't play out like that at all. They kind of just defeat Galactus and it kind of just wraps up very, very neatly here. So I can't help myself but feel just a little mixed on that aspect. And unfortunately, I'm going to put Johnny Storm here in my mix. I love Joseph Quinn. He is amazing in Stranger Things, really good in A Quiet Place Day One, and everything else he's really ever done. And I think he does a great job in the movie for what he's given and probably instructed to do. Just I don't think he's anywhere on the level of Chris Evans, about how Chris Evans played that likable kind of douchebag. And they kind of hype Johnny up in this movie, like being really good with the ladies and everything and kind of having that playboy attitude. But you never really see that, and he never really comes off like that. And I just felt like I wanted a little bit more like fun personality out of him. But instead, I feel like he kind of just like plays it safe, like he's a slightly more lighthearted version of Reed Richards, if that makes sense. But yeah, let's get into my negatives, or just the things that I did not like about this movie. And now, before I get into this, like, obviously I feel like I'm kind of coming off as a little disappointed. It's not bad. It just unfortunately played out how I thought it was gonna play out. Very safe, very just fine, but I can't help but feel slightly disappointed here. And I think my biggest negatives are, again, stuff with the third act, and more specifically with the villains in this movie. So first, let's get into the Silver Surfer. Like I said with my other review of the Rise of Silver Surfer movie, I loved how complicated he was and how it turns out that he was really just a henchman for Galactus, but is kind of unsure of what he's doing and really feels like moral complications with what he's doing. But my issues in that movie is with how quick he just switched sides like it was nothing, and it's almost like they threw out his complexity of being a villain. And in this movie, unfortunately, I have a very similar complaint, to the point where it plays out exactly how it does in Rise of Silver Surfer, so there's nothing new, different, or exciting with how they portray the Silver Surfer in this movie. It played out exactly like in the movie that I just watched a couple of weeks ago, which is frustrating because I like the visualization. Julia Garner does a really great job with what she's given, and like I said, it looks incredible CGI-wise, but they set up something similar where she is a henchman and complicated in this role, and I think they kind of hint at it a little bit. Like, you see sometimes her reactions to certain things Galactus is doing in a scene or two. However, she just switches sides way too quick, and she's less of an ongoing presence in this movie than in the Rise of the Silver Surfer. So I think it's almost worse here, which is frustrating. And it's frustrating too because they set up something between her and Johnny where Silver Surfer actually spoke to Johnny one-on-one in space in her native language, like just to him. And I wish there was more scenes with her and Johnny where we could see more of her complexity, learn more about her home planet and why she's been doing what she's doing, maybe even how she chooses planets for Galactus, and maybe even a little bit more emotion and just complexity with this villain, and have it be more of an ongoing presence where Johnny maybe helps her let her guard down and slowly trust the Fantastic Four, and they come up with like a plan together or something. However, all of this just feels so shortcut because Johnny Storm in this movie figures out her native language pretty quickly, unfortunately, and it just felt all so convenient. He decodes the language and plays a message for her in Times Square of, decoding all the messages that they've been tracking that the Silver Surfer has left on these planets. And she gets all like frustrated, she's like, stop playing that shit, and then flies off away, and we don't see her until the third act when she kind of comes out of nowhere and finishes pushing Galactus into the portal black hole thing to get rid of him. And I just wish, again, like the Silver Surfer here had more of an ongoing presence and more development of where we kind of learn how complex it really is feeling, and the Silver Surfer learns to trust the Fantastic Four and maybe gains an appreciation of trying to save these people on this Earth. It's just frustrating because this movie kind of lacks an ongoing villain presence, because very similar to how I felt with Rise of the Silver Surfer is with the Silver Surfer in this movie, it plays out the exact same way it did in that movie. It comes, say the planet's been marked for death. They go talk to Galactus. There's a little battle conflict. It shows up one or two more times and then switches sides right in the end to help save the Fantastic Four and Earth. So it's like, we've seen this before, but you didn't do anything different. You literally like played it out the exact same way. So it's just so frustrating because the Silver Surfer, I feel like, is such an untapped character where it really could be a bit more than it has been portrayed in these past two movies here. And again, even though I love the visualization of Galactus, I think the lack of development with the Silver Surfer, how it's not really ongoing presence, and then Galactus turns out to be the real big bad once Silver Surfer just kind of switches sides. I just can't help but feel a little bit disappointed that it's essentially just we have a literal really big bad this time, and this villain just kind of wants to destroy and consume Earth, which, like, we've seen stuff like that before. Maybe he goes about it a little bit differently, which makes it a little unique, but ultimately it's just another villain that wants to destroy Earth. And I think that'd be fine, especially given the visualization. Just if the Silver Surfer needed to get more development and really showcase that conflicting villainous nature in her, because in this version both of them just feel so shortchanged and kind of just play out very simple and safe, if that makes sense. And the ending, like I said, is not bad. You get all the Fantastic Four characters together, all working together. Sue Storm is a great scene of her pushing Galactus back into this portal, and it all culminates to them working together. But I can't help feeling just a little disappointed with how anticlimactic it all plays out, where they had very little faults in their plan, and it worked out in the end, and everyone was safe. There was no casualties, no destruction or sacrifice they had to make. And just with a villain the size of Galactus, I felt like there needed to be something, like some sort of loss, even if you didn't want to kill off characters, like just something that really made me feel his threat. But instead they just kind of push him through a portal and they're done with him for now. I mean, I guess it's kind of cool that he's left alive, but it felt like it wrapped up a little too easy, if that makes sense. But overall, I'd say I had a lot of disappointment with this movie, unfortunately, but I feel like with all my disappointing and negative factors of the movie, nothing made me hate this movie or not enjoy myself when I was watching it, because overall, I would say this is easily the best portrayal of Fantastic Four and the F4 family in live action. I think the movie's filled with some good heart, a unique vibe, and it feels more serious compared to the other Fantastic Four movies and other Marvel movies, which I really did appreciate. However, I think the disappointing villains and predictable third act just kind of left me like, could have been significantly better. Instead, it's pretty good, if that makes sense. So I think for me, my rating as of now is going to be, I would look to rent or stream this movie because I wouldn't mind watching it again, especially given some time. I'd like to kind of go back and watch this again. I definitely enjoy myself watching it again here. However, if one day, I found the cool Steelbook or the Blu-ray or 4K was significantly cheap, and I'm like, oh, might as well pick this one up. It's a fun time. I wouldn't mind spending a couple bucks on a physical copy, if that makes sense here. But you guys have my thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps. Please let me know down below what you thought about this. Give me all your spoiler-filled thoughts. Were you really happy with it? Were you disappointed? Were you a little conflicted? What did you think of the new Fantastic Four movie? I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts and feelings down below. But you guys have my thoughts. I appreciate anybody watching my videos, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.